4 a.m. first fruits. This 4 a.m. series has turned into a chapter by chapter Bible study, and we are on 1 Kings chapter 7. Last chapter, in chapter 6, we started diving into building God's temple. Solomon and his men were building this silent construction. Last chapter ended where it said, so he built it in 7 years. This is how chapter 7 starts. Solomon completed his entire complex after 13 years of construction.
So God's temple took 7 years, but yours took 13?
You mentioned how quick God's temple was built in 7 years.
I said that like 7 years wasn't a long time.
Then it goes in to mention that it took almost double the amount of time to build Solomon's temple.
I mean to say palace.
He built the house of the forest of Lebanon. It was 150 feet long, 70 feet wide, and 40 feet high on 4 rows of pillars with cedar beams. It also said, the end of verse 8, and he made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, his wife. I really truly believe it was mentioned this way because it shows Solomon's love for opulence, things that are bougie, you know? And it also talks about how he did the same thing for Pharaoh's daughter, his wife. And later on down Solomon's road, he does struggle with loving opulence over things of God, and then he does struggle with things with his wives.
It's also an interesting difference between how David said, why am I in a palace, but the Lord's in a tent? Very different.
In verse 13, King Solomon had Hiram brought from Tyre. He was a widow's son from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze craftsman. Hiram had great skill, understanding, and knowledge to do every kind of bronze work, so he came to King Solomon and carried out all of his work. So that right there tells you art can be used for divine purpose. Next, it goes on to mention the bronze pillars. Now, listen to these measurements. He cast 2 bronze pillars, each 27 feet high. These suckers are tall, and 18 feet in circumference. Capitals on top of the pillars had gratings of lattice work, wreaths made of chain work, 7 for the first capital and 7 for the second capital, or for the second. He made the pillars with 2 encircling rows of pomegranates on one grating to cover the capital on top. It kind of reminds me of like the 90s when my mom used to decorate our kitchen with apples. He set up the pillars at the portico of the sanctuary. Portico is right when you enter. These pillars were a reminder for all the people who saw them, who first came up to the temple, about God's covenant. That's the whole symbolism of the covenant, and it was supposed to serve as a reminder that strength, pillars are always known for strength. That strength comes from him, not from military or political power, but from God only. In verse 21, he set up the pillars at the portico of the sanctuary. He set up the right pillar and named it Jachin, which means in him is strength. And then the left pillar is named Boaz, which means he shall establish. The tops of the pillars were shaped like lilies. Then the work of the pillars was completed. Now, the next thing in the temple area, the item that we're going to talk about, it says in my book, it's titled the basin. But if you want to do research on this, it's actually called the Moton Sea. He made the cast metal basin look similar to this, 15 feet from brim to brim, perfectly round. It was 7.5 feet high and 45 feet in circumference, wide. Ornamental gourds encircled it below the brim, 10 every half yard, completely encircling the basin. I wanted to know why the gourds, because this is, like, we've been seeing gourds all in this whole palace construction. And apparently the gourds were a symbolism of what they carried, because they would carry their water in the wilderness inside gourds. That's what they would use. Everything they did, decorative wise, they gave glory to God. And so that was a part of the purposes of a lot of these decorations. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. The basin was on the top of them, and their hindquarters were towards the center. The basin was 3 inches thick, and it was and its rim was fashioned like the brim of a cup or a lily blossom. It held 11,000 gallons. So this molten sea was used as a ceremonial cleansing. Priests would have to ceremonially wash before they could do any of their priestly duties. And it also reminds us there was such a constant need for holiness. There's a constant need for holiness when approaching his presence, especially then. And what's crazy is you could wash all you wanted to, you could clean yourself, but it never made them holy. And because of the height of the basins, Wikipedia in that picture, it shows and it talks about a little bit that they just believed that the water would flow from it, so they would clean from the water that it flowed out, and then they would also fill up the carts from the water, which we're about to talk about the carts now. And he made 10 bronze water carts. These water carts were used to wash the sacrifices that were going to be made and making sure that they were also ceremonially clean. It goes on to talk about other bronze basins, other utensils, the completion of the bronze works, and then the completion of the gold's furnishing, which bronze is usually associated with the theme of judgment, and then gold is associated with the theme of divinity and things that are sacred. In 51, so all the work King Solomon did in the Lord's temple was completed. Then Solomon brought in the consecrated things of his father David, the silver, the gold, and the utensils, and put them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. Even after all of this bronze, this hard work, these years of effort for a building, we still know that it was just a building. It was a holy and consecrated building for the Lord to dwell in, but now we are the temple. We should take care of our bodies just like they took care of this temple. And that's why it's so important to stay away from sin. Just think about all of this time and effort and all of these beautiful things that were dedicated for this temple. We have to take care of our bodies, use them to glorify God, and that's why it's so important for us to stay away from sin. When we are living right and we are being obedient, we shine differently. And I'm not saying we don't struggle with sin. I'm just saying keep walking with the Father and listening to his convictions. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next 4 a.m. First Fruit, when we cover chapter 8.